Umberto Napolitano es el fundador de Local Architecture Network. El despacho, fundado en 2002, trabaja con diferentes disciplinas. Este acercamiento se ha convertido en un método y les ha permitido explorar nuevos territorios, así como desarrollar una visión y actitud que abarca asuntos sociales, urbanos, funcionales y formales. Nominados en 2015 para el Premio de Arquitectura Europea Mies van der Rohe. Recibamos a Umberto Napolitano de Local Architecture Network.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank Miguel to invite me. I'm here since 4 days, and I really enjoy this city. So I assume that you don't know our work. It's completely deformed. Like it's not the right proportion. Can we do something? Let me try something. Did you mind if I take 1 minute? Il se passe que c'est complètement déformé. Anyway, so LAN means Local Architecture Network. We started the studio 10 years ago, and in these 10 years, we were lucky enough to work in something like 100 projects. These projects are completely different in terms of typology, geography, sites. This diagram shows, for example, the different size of the project that we have now, which goes from 100 meters square to 100,000 meters square. On va faire un échange pour la résolution. Okay. But I think I can go on that one. No, but let me see one picture, what gives. Yeah, did you mind? Imagine to compress the image. So as I said, the studio is based in Paris, but it's like completely international. This is a map that we update every year with this meta territory between the different cultures that work in our practice. 30 minutes is really short, so I decided to show you just 3 projects, but let's just, I will give you just sharing with you the universe of the studio through the different image, kind of selection of image of what's going on now in the studio. So this is the EDF National Archive. This is an office building, one of our first projects, which looked a little bit like a single family house. I think it's better the image now. And then this is a sport hall, which looked like a cultural center. A student housing in Paris. An hotel in the desert of Atacama. This is a social housing project. An office building in the north of France, Lille. A courthouse. This is a factory where they produce the cognac and tea. A single family house in Lebanon. A prison close to Paris, which let's say it looked like a cultural center. And a bank, which looked like a prison. This is a main city hall. We just finished this project. An hotel. I will go more fast and focus on the 3 that I want to share with you. We also restructured what we call in France Grand Ensemble, which is this kind of modern legacy built in the 60s. This is a fire station, a theater, and the last but not least, we are doing the extension and the restructure of the Grand Palais, which is the biggest French museum. So as you can see through this image, what drives our research is for sure not the function. I mean, our building never look, they are not direct consequence of the program that they guessed and the function. So with the three examples, I will share with you what matter in our research and where we are focused our efforts. So let's go to the origin. The guys you see is Aldo Rossi, and he wrote one book, which for me is like a Bible. It's called The Architecture of the City, where he defined, I will read with you these three lines, which is, by architecture of the city, we mean two different things. First, the city seen as a gigantic man-made object, a work of engineering and architecture that is large and complex and growing over time. Second, certain more limited but still crucial aspect of the city, namely urban fact, which, like the city itself, are characterized by their own history and thus by their own form. So what Aldo Rossi said is really simple. If we start to look at a city like a piece of art, an hand-made object, as an architect, every time you build something in this city, you complete this piece of art. So you have to understand, let's say, this abstract form of the city, but in the same time, what he called the urban fact, which is this stratification of layers made by history, social aspect, economy, etc. So what we are interested in our studio is how do you go from that model to this one, to the real identity of the city. So every time we go, we make a bridge between the abstract form and the reality through a process of identity. And we do that through the form. Form, it's a word which is overused in architecture. For us, I will use the definition of Paul Klee. Form must no account ever been considered as something to be go over with, as a result, as an end, but rather as a genesis, growth, essence. Form as a semblance is an evil and a dangerous spectre. What is interesting in what Paul Klee said is that form is not how things appear. Form is not the end, is not the result, but is a beginning. So what I am interested in is where the form goes and which is the movement of this form, which stay a bit really close to what Aldo Rossi wrote in Autobiografia Scientifica. The form remains and presides over the building in a world where the functions are constantly transforming. Thus, within the form itself, the matter reshape. The three fantastic words that all architects use, which is form, function, and materials, the only one that we can control as an architect is the form. We know that the function change, we know that materials evolve. So if I have to define my work or the work of our studio, we are making form. And we are trying to make this form as open as possible to make an evolution inside the form itself. So if all what I said is Chinese, I think through these three examples, you will understand what is the process that leads us. The first one is a project in Bègle. Bègle is a city really close to Bordeaux, the city of wine, and was built in the 60s, following the legacy of the modern movement. So it was built, those type of intervention in France is called the grand ensemble, which means large part of the city built in this kind of block and tower system. The 35 more violent places in France are an heritage, let's say, the misunderstanding of an heritage of the modern. Bègle was of those. No one knows what was public, what was collective, and then what was private. So it was a territory of no one. A man came, which is the president of the Green, Noël Mamère, and he did two things really interesting. The first one, he created an infrastructure in the city that linked the center of Bègle with the center of Bordeaux. And the second one, he destroyed everything. This act was really welcomed by the citizen. And starting from these ruins, he organized a competition which was won by a Dutch studio, with an idea really simple, which is building are masses, and these masses are big enough to define the void and define the public space. So there is a really clear sense of limit between what is private, what is public, and which is the role of the architecture to define the void. So we were invited to participate to this 3-block competition. And at the beginning, let's say, in the urban master plan, they were planned for 14,000 meters square. But 2008 came, the crisis too, and the investors decided to cut into this program. So instead to have these huge masses to define the space, with just 2 levels, we achieve our objective. So this gray space, in a certain sense, was the space where, for us, it was interesting to introduce a research about how you move the form and what is the potential that that void can give us. At that time, we were working in a hybrid model in the studio, which was, the question of how you can reach the quality of the single-family house in a collective system. It's something that we try to work on constantly. And we propose this abstract form for the competition, which was a superposition of single-family house in a collective system. So each apartment has no neighborhood, and he can use this void to double his own surface. So it was really interesting, and we applied that to the plot, and that gives back this kind of diagrams where the idea was if someone buy 100 meters square and his family grow, he has the possibility to extend his own apartment in a void which has minimum the size of the living room and sometimes the size of the entire apartment. So we won the competition, which is really crazy in a certain sense, because this kind of building, as you can understand, is really expensive. Instead to pay 1 facade, you have to pay 4. So, but the advantage is that each flat has 3 orientations, one in the street, one in the courtyard, and then in the garden itself. So we started, it has taken 7 years. It was a nightmare because really we don't have the money to build it. So we had to invent a system which was a simplification of the structure, 6 prefabricated panels that gives the possibility to like build this building as a Lego, and then a screen which controls totally the weather and the climate. So the idea on the competition was this one, 2015, and we hope that in 2055, each hall will be occupied by the people itself. So that was during the construction side. The typology are really different, but you can see the relationship between what the people buy and what they have as a potential. It's less than the half of the price of the normal price in France, which is 1,000 euro meter square. So as you can imagine, it's really, really simple. The details are really basic and everything is standard. This is some more recent picture. And they just start to live in 1 week ago. And I'm really proud that they start to use this void. So the space to move for the form in the first example was the void. The second one is clearly the opposite. It's in the north of Paris, and as you can imagine, in Paris you have no void. Everything is really expensive, so once you can build something, you will do it. So it's the last district ongoing, which is called the Zac Cardinet, and the project is something like that, this kind of ecologic global city that we build everywhere in Europe, and they start to build also in America. There is a park in the middle, buildings around, and you give this one to different architects, and in function of the talent they have, this project can be good or not. But that was a nightmare for me when I started to do this competition, because it really, I'm in love with Paris. I'm in Paris since 20 years, and this doesn't look like Paris. Paris is an extrusion of an entire ground in 7 floors, and it was built, it's really interesting, it was built 70% in only 100 years. Under Napoleon, but under the guide of the Baron Haussmann. 100 years, it's amazing. If you think that the entire city, 75%, was planned and built by private under control of the public during a really short period. He did what all the cities in Europe started to do in the 19th, but he did 2 things really interesting, that he make a regulation for the building, and he imposed an uniform facade. That gives back an incredibly interesting urban form, which I don't have the time to share with you, but it gives back this building, which is called the Haussmannian building. The Haussmannian building, in only 1.5 century, it was conceived for being housing. He has guest office, school, museum, gallery, shopping. Is one of the most flexible figures that exist. In only 200 years, the tectonic of Paris stay as a patrimony, and inside the city was ready to change and follow the evolution of the economy, the society, and the geography. And more than that, this building is Paris itself. It's completely generic, so completely flexible, but in the same time, it's really specific, because the building defines the image and the identity of the city. So we ask to ourselves how we can be so intelligent in something that we do now, and which is the alchemy or the secret of this building. And then we start to study it. What is incredible that this building, also if you look like a stone building, in reality has between 50 and 65 of the facade is in glass. It's made by windows which are really on a grid, which means that you can do whatever you want in the back. Whatever is the plan you want to do. If you want a bedroom, you just take one. If you want a living room, you take 2, etc., etc. So the facade is the base, and is conceived before the destination of the building. Then, you know, after the modern and the standardization of the construction, we build in Europe housing as 3 meters between slabs and slabs, and office as 3.6, because you have the techniques on the ceiling. In the Haussmannian building, the height and the volume of each floor is completely different, which means that you start from 4.5, and then 2.8, and then 4.2, and then 3.3, and then 3, and then 2.8, which means that in the same building, you can get a completely hybridization of function. You have the disponibility of clearly different volume. And then the building, it's really compact, which in terms of energy, it's really interesting. All the exterior space are just pieces of metal on the facade. The structure is really clear, so when you have to open a wall, you know if it's necessary or not to the stability of the building. And then there is this fantastic thing that the urban ground floor can be connected to the first floor without using the main stairs, which means that the potential of commercial in Paris can double itself the surface. So if you come now, for example, and it changes every day. Yeah? McDonald's, if they need, they take the first floor. If it's a small shopping, the first floor is used for living or housing or whatever. So it's really interesting because also in the ground floor, there is this capacity to double the surface. So it was there from the beginning. What is interesting is that if you watch out the historical section of Haussmann, you can find that intelligence and that stratification of the society from the beginning of the conception. So we ask to ourselves, how we can be inspired by that and rewrite this line in a contemporary way. So we propose a structure on the facade to freeze completely the inside. And then we connect to the ground floor and the first floor with 2 different heights. And then we decide to use a medium size of height, which is 3.3, where you can do a nice housing, but you can also do an office. Everything is based on an office grid, and with only 1 window, we did the entire building. And when they need a loggia, they just put the same windows in the back. That was at the time of the competition where we chose an housing situation and an office situation inside the same building. And to increase this intelligence, or to be more radical, everything is in the facade. Electricity, water, structure, sunscreen, glass, everything is in these prefabricated panels. So if in 20 years someone has to move a wall, they know exactly where they have to plug and to search what they need. So the building is like a Lego, and it gives that. And because the plot is triangular, this regular grid gives back what we call an immeuble d'angle, which is part of the imaginary of Paris. I love this picture. And also, if it was conceived to be generic, in reality, the quality of the housing is really high, and the entire building was rented in probably 3 hours. This is our section, hoping that in 2055, it will be a nightclub on the top, an office down, a school on the left, etc., etc. So the movement of the form in this housing example is made by the, let's say, the form itself and the intelligence of this structure. There is, in both cases, you apply an abstract model to a concrete case. So this abstract form, it's part of an universe of form where the architect has to pick the right one, or try to pick the right one. And if you ask to someone, how do you choose the form? You can ask for 100,000 architects, you will have 100 different answers. In our case, we start years and years ago to learn how to read the form and probably have a direct link between the idea and the result. It's a bit like Matisse said, we want something else, we work towards serenity through simplification of idea and form. The ensemble, there is an error, the ensemble is our only ideal. Details lessen the purity of the line and harm the emotional intensity. We reject them. For an architect, it's really strange to say that we reject details, but in reality, a good detail is something that disappeared to reveal the intensity of one form. To be more clear, I select some pictures which are my favorite one. It's from a Japanese photographer called Sugimoto, and I think that those are really the best picture I've never seen for an architect, for a building. That reveals, through the techniques of B-blur, that reveal the real form of the building. It's not its details, it's not the line, it's not the materials, it's the intensity of this ensemble. He did a series of that, you know all of them. And so the last project is about that. It's about a pure form that become the link between the idea and this is sunset. It's fantastic, no? So it's in Bure. Bure is a really small village which look like that. It's in the middle of, I don't have Bure. You should put the image down, but Bure is there. It's 90 people live there. Mandran-Bernois, there are 60 people. And Saudron, there are kind of 4 families. So the site is really in the middle of nowhere, and the site looks like that. The competition was organized by EDF, which is the world's largest producer of electricity. 84% of its production is nuclear, and only 0.4 is others, 8% renewable energy. So EDF is really that, but they communicate on that. And this paradox was really present in the brief of the competition. They asked us to produce a European model, something that no one has done before in terms of how you deal with energy. But in the same time, they were scared about the green piece, the nuclear, so they asked in the same time to do something that no one has to see, to hide it. They clearly suggest for the archive building to make maximum 1 floor. Then we studied the history of the archive, we start to see our model, and in this, whatever is the century you pick up, you will never find an archive building which is just 1 floor. And if you go deeper in this history, you discover that there is a culture in the Mormons of archiving things. The Mormons, they sell software, they sell shelves, they have the system to archive, they have a really knowledge of that because they start before everyone's. And they archive, they build up their own fortune on archiving things, and they archive themselves in a mountain in Utah. It's close to Salt Lake City. Well, there is the Genealogical Mormons Archive. So at the time, it was our first big competition, this one. So I was really into I have to win. So I took the plane and I was visiting the archive, and which is like extreme and extremely efficient. It's a mountain with just 3 holes that you cannot see. And you enter, and inside this mountain, there are all the documents, the microfilm, what you need. So, because when you archive something, you need to reach 16, 18 degrees. So, more you cut the contact with exterior, more your project work. So once in France, we decide to propose an alternative strategy to the one that the client suggests. And we start with this diagram to show that if we did a cube of 5 floors, for example, for the same net floor area, we could cut for 2 the envelope surface, the facade, and the energy loss. So without doing nothing, just with a form, we cut it into the consumption of the building. And also, we show that with 2 trips a week, moving object inside the building, one will do 12 kilometers and the other one 3. It's obvious because there is an elevator. And then we show also that was a little, let's say, a lie, but sometimes you have to lie when you do competition. So we show that from the only point of view, which is the street, a flat building will occupy the entire plot, and it will come really close to the street, and it will appear bigger than a really big one in the back. As I say, this is not real, but what is real is the fact that we freeze the land, and we could use it to clean completely the water and reuse the water in this project. So we were enough convinced to make an answer different than the others with this huge cube. But it was really like we start to imagine, can we find a strategy which has to, an archive has no windows, nothing happen, is something which is not used. Imagine that they opened the doors of this archive each 5 years. So also if he has a function, the question is still architecture, something which is not used. And so our proposal was, okay, let's play with that and let's find an idea to create a kind of synergy between the landscape around, the color of the sky, the color of the plant, and the building. Everyone came at the office with the same image, which is ridiculous. From the interns to me, we were all into this can we dream about a building that can change its color if outside is yellow or not? So we propose those 3D image. I was 27 when we started this project. We proposed those image where the green continued. The building is composed by a concrete part, which is really linked to the ground, to the country, and then this predator skin that can change and reflect what's its around. We propose also more green and white, and then we chose this image to let's say, to be on the details and show to the client that everything was possible and we could do it. And so we won the competition, and that is how the building looks today, which is really close to the image. But what you should know is that at the beginning of that, I called the client and I said, listen, we have no idea how to build it. No one has done this facade before, and let's be honest, which is one of our qualities sometimes, and let's make up a team just for the facade. So to show you the epic works we did, so the panels are like 20 meters high, there are 1,200 studs in each facade. I will show you the video of the production of one panel. This is the client, which was completely crazy. Can you send the video? Take your time. Do you like it? Doesn't work? Ça marche? It will work. So just for it's wrote time up, but I think I have other 3-4 minutes, no? So this is the production of one of these panels in the facade. As you will see, we had to invent the system. The position of each of them is really specific. There is no pattern, and it's made by this piece, and a laser on the top of the place, which gives this triangle where you have to put your own studs. So we call it, you know, the people that lives in the tree city around, and we open up a position to pass the studs. No one's came. So there are something like 1,200 each panels. This is the color of the concrete, which is self-cleaning concrete, exactly of the same color of the ground. Everything looks really simple, but you have to imagine that just to find the shapes of the studs, we spent something like 8 months. They had to resist to the rotation and traction in the same times, and they don't have to lose the chrome, so we put these 2 film, which looks evident now. One stays on the mold, and the other one protects the stud from the other. Which is that. And then we use sand to open the surface of the concrete and make it like a stone, which is this process. Then just with the water, the studs start to appear, and you can see how things work. The problem was that to do that, there are only one guy in France which was able to build these panels. So 2 by 2, the panels has to cross the entire country to come in the construction site. And also the tools that you find on the market are too small for these panels. So everything you see in red, we designed it for the construction site. So next image, you will see 12 hours on the site. You should know that the client was really into the project, so he put a camera that takes a shot each 5 minutes. But what is nice is that you can see how the facade interact with the exterior during one day. You can go back on the slide. And so everything was designed to disappear, like the fire doors, which are there, the enclosure, which is an old English system called AA, because just people walk, they fall down, they discover, and they say, ha ha. But the idea was to lose the administrative limit of the plot and become completely abstract. The same system. And then underground, you have the office space for those 5 people that come each 5 years. Also, the logistic part is -3. So also when the site is in activity, you don't see it from the street. Obviously, we could not erase the logo. So you enter the building here, everything turns around a patio. The office gives on the country, on the view on the country. And this is the terrace, where those 5 people meet. The rest, it's really industrial. What I like in this building, I mean, when we finish it, as I said, I asked to myself, is still architecture something which is not used? And what's the influence of this form, which is the interaction with a more large-scale idea? And then we finished the building, and I received a phone call from the landscape design that said, Umberto, you should come and see what's happened. And what's happened since 3 years is the fact that, because probably the people around, they don't have nothing to do, they come, they wait for the end of the day, they sit on the street, and they use the building as a place where they see the sunset. So when I was there the first time, until that image, because you cannot see, but you can see the sunset only through the reflection, so there are 3, 4 old guy, 80 years old guy, staying in this street, just waiting for this moment. And I was really happy. I was really happy because it's a bit like Haussmann, or a bit like the first project, when architecture go over the reason for what it was built, for me, is architecture. Thank you.
Agradecemos a la Universidad Iberoamericana, así como al Instituto Francés para América Latina, por su apoyo para esta conferencia.